comfort never feels like a problem. That's why it's dangerous. It doesn't scare you. It doesn't hurt you. It just slowly convinces you to stay where you are. There was a small bird that lived near the edge of a wide forest. Unlike the other birds, her life was easy. She didn't have to search far for food. A kind old farmer scattered grains every morning near the same tree. Water collected in a shallow stone bowl after the rain. The branches she rested on were low and safe. Nothing demanded effort. Other birds flew far, over hills, across fields, into places she had never seen. They returned tired, sometimes injured, but excited. She listened to their stories quietly. When they asked her why she never flew with them, she answered calmly, "I don't need to. Everything I need is already here." And she was right. Her days were peaceful, predictable, comfortable. But something strange began to happen. While the other birds grew stronger wings, hers stayed the same. While they learned how to face strong winds, she avoided them. When storms came, she stayed low and waited for them to pass. Flying started to feel unnecessary. Even the idea of it made her uncomfortable. One afternoon, she climbed onto a branch slightly higher than usual. The ground looked farther away than she remembered. Her heart beat faster. She stepped back immediately. "This is enough," she told herself. "I'm fine where I am." But that night, as she watched silhouettes of birds crossing the sky, a quiet thought settled in her chest. What if comfort isn't protecting me? What if it's keeping me small? She didn't have an answer yet, but the question stayed. The next morning felt the same as every other. The sun rose gently. Grains lay scattered beneath the tree. The water bowl was full. Comfort waited for her, right on time. The bird ate without rushing. She rested longer than usual. Nothing forced her to move, but something inside her felt different. Not fear, not hunger, restlessness. When a strong breeze passed through the forest, other birds lifted themselves into the air without thinking. They leaned into the wind, letting it carry them higher. She stayed where she was. The wind tugged at her feathers, almost invitingly. She shifted her feet, uneasy. Flying suddenly felt risky, unnecessary, almost foolish. Why struggle, she thought, when staying is easier? Days passed. Slowly, she began choosing the lowest branches, even when higher ones were empty. She stopped hopping from tree to tree. Short movements replaced long ones. Her wings still worked, but they felt heavy now. One afternoon, the farmer didn't come. No grains fell onto the ground. The bird waited. She watched the sun climb higher. She waited longer. Other birds didn't panic. They simply flew off toward the fields. She stayed behind, telling herself the food would come later. It didn't. Hunger crept in quietly. So did a strange realization. She had never learned where to go. That evening, she tried to follow the others. She climbed onto a branch and opened her wings. The air felt unfamiliar, unstable. She flapped once, awkwardly, and dropped back down. Her chest tightened, not because she couldn't fly, but because she hadn't practiced when it was easy. That night, the forest felt larger than it ever had. Comfort had always fed her, sheltered her, protected her, but it had never prepared her. And for the first time, the bird understood something she had avoided. Comfort doesn't leave you suddenly. It waits until you need strength, then reveals you never built it. Morning came with a silence she wasn't used to. No grains on the ground, no familiar sounds of wings landing nearby. The forest felt distant now. like it belonged to others. Her stomach tightened again, sharper this time. She looked up at the sky, not with curiosity, but with urgency. The birds she once watched were gone. Not because they were braver, but because they had learned how to leave. She moved toward the tree's highest branch, slower than before. Each hop felt uncertain. When she reached the top, the ground looked frighteningly far. Her wings trembled as she opened them. The wind brushed past her again, stronger than yesterday. It didn't feel gentle. It didn't feel kind. She hesitated. Comfort whispered its final promise. Stay. You've survived this long. But hunger answered louder. Surviving isn't the same as living. She stepped forward and slipped. For a moment, there was panic. Her wings flailed awkwardly, catching air in pieces instead of fully. She dropped fast, barely controlling the fall. She landed hard on a lower branch, breath racing, pain shot through her chest. Not enough to break her, just enough to remind her she was real. She could have stayed there, rested, recovered, waited again. Instead, she tried once more. The second attempt was worse. The third was exhausting. Each fall left her weaker, but something else was changing too. Her wings burned. Her heart worked harder. Muscles she had never needed before were waking up. Hours passed. By the time the sun leaned low, she managed something small. A glide. Not graceful, not far, but forward. She landed on a tree she had never touched before. Breathing hard, she looked back at the place she had stayed for so long. It hadn't been a prison. It had been a cushion. And cushions don't teach you how to stand when the ground disappears. The bird rested on the unfamiliar branch, aching and tired. But for the first time, she wasn't waiting. She was learning. The next morning, the bird woke before the sun. Her wings ached, not the gentle soreness of rest, the deep kind that comes from using something the right way for the first time. The forest looked different from this branch, wider, more open, and strangely, less frightening. She didn't feel brave, she didn't feel ready, but she felt less protected by staying still. So she didn't wait. She jumped again. This time, the fall didn't come immediately. Her wings caught more air than before, not enough to soar, but enough to stay up. She moved awkwardly, adjusting instinctively. The wind pushed her sideways. She corrected. A few heartbeats later, she landed farther than she ever had. Something inside her settled. Not excitement, not pride. Understanding. Comfort hadn't been evil. It had simply asked for nothing. And when life finally asked for strength, comfort had nothing to give back. She spent the following days flying short distances, then longer ones. Each flight was uncomfortable, each landing imperfect. But with every effort, the sky felt less like a threat and more like a place she belonged. One evening, she watched other birds pass overhead again. This time, she didn't watch from below. She followed, not as fast, not as high, but moving. And that was enough. Comfort had once kept her safe, but effort gave her direction. And she finally understood what comfort never tells you. It doesn't stop you from falling. It only delays the moment you learn how to fly.